Hey grade 7, and welcome to another edition of Mr. V Teaches Math. And today, folks, what I thought we would do is look at a special kind of ratio. It's got a different name, and they're called rates. Rates, you'll notice that there are two sets of words that are highlighted there. There's equivalent rates, and then there is rates. The word rate means it's a comparison of two things measured in different types of units. And so I think that the most useful rate that we typically deal with is probably speed limits. That's probably what you're the most used to, seeing, 100 kilometers an hour. That's probably the one that we're used to the most, okay? Now, equivalent rates, because we're going to be using equivalent rates today, are rates that represent the same comparison. So, for example, 90 kilometers driven over 2 hours is the same thing as 45 kilometers driven in an hour. Those are equivalent rates. They represent the same comparison, but they do use different units. You have kilometers versus hours. Okay? So, here's the problem that we're going to be working with right now. My cousin Riley, I actually do have a cousin Riley, he started working at a new job making pizzas at Pizza Hut, and for every 3 hours that he works, he actually earns $27, which is not a lot of money. So the main question is, how can we calculate Riley's earnings if he works 24 hours in a week? Okay? So here's how we're going to be doing that. Let me just move this off the side for a second. Here's how we're going to write this. He earns $27 for every 3 hours that he works. Now, it's key to remember that when you're writing rates, you have to show the different units. You just have to. Okay? If you don't show the units, it's a ratio, and then it's just incorrect. So we are going to show it as an equivalent rate because we want to know how much he's going to earn. We don't know actually how much he's going to earn if he works 24 hours in a week. And so this is a proportion that we've seen before. We've seen these kinds of proportions. And what we're going to do is we're going to use our scale factor. In this case it's 8 because 3 times 8 is 24. And then we have to multiply this times 8 as well. And so we'll bust out our trusty calculator. And we say it's $27 times 8, which means that Riley is going to earn $216 if he works over the course of 24 hours. Okay. Now, my next question is just a little follow-up, is if we know that he earns $27 in 3 hours, I'm curious if we can figure out how much he earns per hour. And so we'll set it up the same way. $27 over 3 hours is going to equal some amount of money over 1 hour. Now this is a situation where instead of multiplying to get a new answer, we are actually going to divide. And we're going to divide by 3. That's going to be our scale factors, divide by 3. And again, we can get out our calculator, and we can do 27 divided by 3. And we know that he earns $9 per hour. Okay? Now, a couple of things. It's important to note that rates are often written with this slash. Okay? For example, the maximum speed on major highways is 100 kilometers /h. Okay? We know that means per. The slash is read as per, meaning for each or for every. So the rate 100 kilometers /h means that on average you're traveling a distance of 100 kilometers for every hour you are driving. Okay, so it's very appropriate to use that slash because it means per. All right, that's important to know when we write rates. Okay, so let's get into some problems. So calculating a rate. Now, on a recent trip, I'm going to adjust it just a little bit. On a recent trip from Kingston to Toronto, Brooks' uncle drove the 240 kilometers in 3 hours. So what was the average rate he drove? So the way we can do that is we put the distance, it's 240 kilometers, over the time it took him, which is 3 hours. And we want to know the average rate he drove, which means that how far would he have gone in 1 hour. Okay, so we don't know how far he drove in 1 hour, but we know that it took him 1 hour. And again, this is a situation where you want to use your scale factor, but it's going to be a divide. It's going to get smaller. Okay, so we're going to divide both numbers by 3, and then 3 divided by 3 is 1, obviously, and then 240 divided by 3 is 80, which means that Brooks' uncle drove an average of 80 kilometers per hour. The second part of that question is, what if he took only 2.5 hours, 2.5 hours to drive the distance? What would the average rate be? So it just changes a little bit, where it's 240 kilometers over 2.5 hours, and you want to know how far he would have driven in 1 hour. Okay, scale factor is pretty simple again, because you're just going to divide by 2.5, and same over here, divide by 2.5. Okay, so then 240 divided by 2.5 on the calculator means that he drove an average of 96 kilometers per hour. Okay, so that's example 1 for calculating a rate. So let's look at a second problem. Jean-Pierre earns $6 for every 50 newspapers that he delivers. And if he delivers 450 newspapers in a week, how much will he earn? So again, we're going to set this up in fraction form. So you have 50 papers, iron papers, over $6. Notice I'm putting the money on the bottom this time. This is going to tell you papers per money, I guess. And we want to know that if he delivers 450 papers, we want to know how much money he's going to earn. Now notice, papers on the top, money on the bottom, money on the bottom. You have to set it up like that, otherwise you're going to get the incorrect answer. So it's really important to remember that as well. Now, to get from 50 to 450, I know that I have to multiply it by 9, which if that's my scale factor, that means I multiply 6 times 9 as well. I don't actually need to do that on a calculator because I know that 6 times 9 is $54. Okay, that's how much he earns if he delivers 450 papers. Okay. Lastly, last problem that we're going to go over together is Michael worked part-time in the public library. One Saturday he worked 4 hours and earned $32. And then what's his rate of pay? And so again, I'm just going to set this up a little bit different. I'm going to set it up like this. We have $32 per 4 hours is going to equal some amount of money per hour. Okay, so this is like setting it up like a ratio, sort of. It's the same thing as saying something like this. $32 to 4 hours is equal to some unknown amount to every 1 hour. Okay, so notice you can use the ratio form and set it up as a proportion like this as well. I'll show you the fraction way in just a second. Now, to get from 4 to 1, obviously we're dividing by 4. And to figure out how much he earns in 1 hour, you have to divide the amount by 4 as well, which means that he earns $8 per hour. I don't need a calculator for that one. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, and quickly to set it up as a fraction, looks like this, equals some number over 1 hour. Scale factor is the same, and the same here, which means x still equals $8 an hour. But that's just the way that you would do that. Okay, so that should be all I need to tell you about rates.